In this video, we are going to discuss how to set up themes with Tailwind CSS. So for this, we're going to use a simple example of a house listing that I built here on the left. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a simple theme selector at the top here that will transition this entire component between different themes with different color styles being applied. If you want to follow along, I've linked this starter code in the description. So the key to using themes with Tailwind is to leverage CSS variables, which we'll use to extend the Tailwind config, and then we'll update the values of those variables between different theme values, which will then propagate into the Tailwind styling. So let's start by building out some CSS variables for the types of colors that we want on the page. So for this, I'm going to go into the global CSS file. Let me close the sidebar, and let's define some styles that we'll use. So I use @layer_base, so we'll apply this on the base layer of styles. In the root, I will define a few colors. So first, I'll define a variable called color primary, and by default, we'll set this to be this kind of black theme that is currently active. So here I'll apply a color using HSL, value of 0, 0%, and 0%. So it's just black. I'll define a color secondary, which will be the same color as before, but just with 50% lightness. So this will give us a gray. I'll define a color text base, and this will be pure white, which will be the same HSL, but with 100% light. And then finally, we'll also define a color BG primary, which will also be the same white as well. So now that we've defined the values of these variables for the default case, let's go ahead and just define what these variables should be for different themes. So for example, let's go here and define a class called theme black. And we'll want to say the color primary should be the same black, which I'll go up here and copy. And I want the color secondary to be this gray. Now, this is the same as the default values, but we'll use this as we're toggling back and forth, so we'll explicitly define it. But let's also say I define a theme orange. And for this one, I will use a different primary and secondary color. So let's say an HSL of 25, 100%, 50%, and a color secondary of HSL 25, 100%, and 65%. Now, let me quickly go ahead and define a couple more themes in the same way. Okay, so I've just gone ahead and quickly added some more themes here for different colors. So purple, green, and blue, all with their own values for color primary and color secondary. So now that we've defined all of these values that we want for different themes, let's connect these variables up to the Tailwind config. So for that, let me go into the Tailwind config file in the project down here. And what I'll do here is after this plugins, I will add a value for a theme, then extend, and we want to extend the colors here. And what we'll do here is define a new color called primary, and we'll say it takes the value of var of the color primary CSS variable that we had before. I'll define another color called secondary, which will take the value of the color secondary variable. We'll have one called primary BG or BG primary, which will take the value of the color BG primary variable. And finally, one called T base or text base, which will take the value of the color text base variable. All right, so now we have these CSS variables connected to the Tailwind configuration. So now let's go ahead and start using these in our actual JSX. Okay, so there are a few places that we want to insert these colors. So the first place is going to actually be on this image. So when we hover over the image, you can see there's a color overlay that comes up. We want to dynamically adjust this. So here I'm just going to say in this hover, instead of BG black, I'm going to set it to be BG secondary. And let me restart the server so that we get the new values from the Tailwind config. So now if I go back here and say secondary, there we go. It's now auto-populating. Next up will be this H1 here at the top. I want this text to be a color text primary. Next up will be this button down here. So this buy now button. We'll set this to be a background of primary instead of background of black. And on hover, we will set this to be a background of secondary. And the text should be a value of T base. Finally, on this second button here, the background we'll set here is BG primary, which is the background of this whole page, which we'll add in a second. The border should be of color secondary, and on hover, the border should be of color primary. And then just scrolling all the way back up, overall, on this main tag, instead of the BG white, let's just set this to be of color BG primary. So if I hit save, nothing really has changed here. And that's because right now, by default, all these variables have just the white and black values that we had set before already. But now let's add the ability to switch between these different themes to get these different values of the variables to come through. So for that, I'm going to first go at the very top here, and I'm going to define just a simple array called themes. So this will be just a list of all the themes that we have. So black, orange, purple, green, and blue. Then on this home component, I'm going to create a new state variable called theme. And by default, it will be a use state of type string. And by default, we'll just set it to be the first value of this themes array. Let's import use state. Then I'm going to add a quick selector that allows us to switch between these different themes. So underneath this main tag, I'm going to create a div. And this div is just going to have class name flex call. And inside of this div, I'm going to have an h3. And this h3 is going to say select theme. And this h3, let's just quickly add some styling here. A font semi-bold. If I hit save, you can see there's a text. And now let's actually list out the theme options. So I'm going to do another div, which is going to have class name flex and gap4. And then inside this div, we're going to map over the theme array. And for each value, we'll just return a simple div with just the text of the theme. And this div will have type cursor pointer. The key will be just the name, T. And importantly, on click, we'll want to say, we want to set the theme to be of that value. So now if I hit save, we can see we have just a simple list of themes. And if I were to click on any of these, well, nothing's really changing. And that is because we need to do one final step to activate the themes. Remember, we define these themes as overall classes that set these values for the variables. So we need to add these classes into this main tag. So for that, I'm just going to change this class name to be a string literal so we can have a dynamic value. And at the end, I'm just going to add a value of theme. And the name we will just pull in is the active theme. Okay, so I hit save, let me refresh the page. And now if I click on orange, there we go. Everything changes to orange. The overlay changes. All this other color as well changes to orange. Same with purple, green, and blue. So we can now quickly switch between the themes. Now, the one final thing I'm going to do is right now between the themes as we switch, it's a pretty harsh switch, an instant switch. So let's add a quick smooth transition as we switch themes. So here in the CSS file underneath the layer base, I'm just going to add a styling to all selectors and just say at apply. So we can use Tailwind classes, transition colors, duration of 500, and ease in out. So now if I hit save, if I switch now, we get a nice little crossfade animation between the different colors as we switch themes. So with that, we've added the ability to dynamically switch themes in this component. If you have any questions about theming with Tailwind, feel free to drop them in the comments below. And on screen now is another video for you to check out, and I'll see you in the next video.